Okay, so we're going to have a little discussion on shortcuts to fast track your BJJ progress, certain things to focus on. We always get students kind of coming to us and talking about what they need to learn, how they need to learn, guidance in terms of guiding their way into the BJJ journey. So come up with this video right now in terms of talking about some shortcuts that we can go over. The first one is definitely the most important one, and that is training with intentions. So what do you think about what that means in terms of training with intentions?
To me, it means having very specific purpose. Like I'm working on guard passing and going, okay, what are the things I need to work on? In case I'm working on Tarian passing, and then coming to my coach and communicating about these are the things I want to work out. This is what I'm doing. Please advise if I'm doing anything wrong or anything.
Yeah, it's definitely, and it's a big thing I always try to explain to you guys is focus more on like skill development than trying to win every day. So I do see a lot of guys, the biggest mistake they're coming with training with intention is they come on the mat and they just want to roll and win the rounds. Instead of what skill development are you doing is actually what you said. So that leads into like having the plan, right? And when we go into having a plan, we have two different views of having a plan. We have short goal plans and we have long goal plans. What do you think about those?
So for me, there's obviously minor skill development in a short-term perspective.
Yeah.
Like Tariandos and then that. And then from a long-term perspective is building larger sequences around all of that.
Yeah.
So connecting that to other sequels.
Yeah. So a shorter way of thinking is like a long-term plan would be, I want to get better at passing. And then our shorter goals would be, what passing sequences do I need? A chest-on-chest passing, long passing, Toriando, leg drag system. And a short-term goal plan would consist of, I would say, anything between 3 and 6 weeks, depending on how detailed the concept is that you're working on. And if you are actually catching the information, if you're actually getting on with the information, some guys hit stagnant points and need to be on that topic a little bit longer. And then that will obviously, the short goal plan will lead into the long goal plan of 6 months. So 6 months you're actually working on getting better at passing with different short goal of passing concepts. So I do think a lot of people struggle with setting out plans and setting out the short goal plans. I do think people are vague in terms of long-term plans. I want to get better at submissions, or I want to get better at my wrestling, instead of focusing on training with an intention, which means that I'm training specifically to develop my skill set and not just winning. So every time I get on the mat, I need to have a purpose on the mat. My short-term goal is chest-on-chest passing, which means that every time I'm on the mat for the next 6 weeks during sparring, I'm focusing on that. And it can get a little bit frustrating because you might not be losing, you might get submitted, but you have an intention and a plan of working on a specific thing, a short-term goal on a live opponent that with resistance. That does get a little bit easier as we go down into the other concepts. And yeah, I just think guys need to think of training with intentions in terms of that view a little bit better. What do you think?
Completely agree. I can tell you from personal experience, when we were prepping for Euros end of last year, early last, you said to us, you need to come up with a plan. These are the things in training. Obviously, we wanted to improve everything, but you can only do one thing at a time, really. And we had to come up with like 2 or 4 week cycles per concept technique.
Yeah.
It got a bit frustrating, obviously, because you're like, cool, I'm doing this, but I'm still losing. But I mean, it paid off in the long run. My skills development over time in that period, that training camp, was definitely there's massive growth, you know, and that paid off from a victory perspective. And I could see that with all my teammates doing the same thing as well.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people might struggle with being consistent with that. And I think you either have like a coach that can provide you that service, or you need to then go out and look on how you can implement that. And it's sometimes hard in a class structure because the coach has to implement a certain curriculum, but that doesn't stop you from drilling your basically intention or your small goal or long-term goal before or after class, as well as implementing those smaller long-term goals in sparring, correct?
100%. That's what I was trying to say. It was, even if we're doing De La Riva guard, but I'm working like single legs, you know, I'm always going to try and revert sparring, revert back to the thing that I'm personally actually trying to work on.
Yeah. And that comes to what you need to work on. That comes to the next big point, right? Which is studying. And when I ask guys to study, a lot of guys don't understand what that means. So to break it down, it's everyone has a certain body type, and certain body types are pointed more advantage to certain moves. So long guys, in terms of guards, could play more of like a spider guard, triangles and darces, compared to shorter guys with chest on chest, guillotines, rear naked strangles, and so forth. But it's easy for an individual, if they don't have a coach that can provide them with that information, then to go online and find repetitional competitors that are basically the same body type, personality. However, even if you're trying to focus on, say, a butterfly sweep, who is the individual that is leading the way of the butterfly sweep, and take that aspect from that individual. And it's very important to work on that small aspect of that individual's game instead of trying to mimic the individual's whole game, because I do think that will cause certain problems. But learning how to study and knowing your body type comes into the major factor that will help with training with intention. So what do you think about that?
I mean, I completely agree. Obviously, I don't think there's much perfect. I mean, knowledge is knowledge, and it's always good, you know. But I'm like a triangle guy.
Yeah,
I've struggled with them my entire jiu-jitsu career. It's not something I want to spend too much time on from a competitive perspective. Obviously, I learn it so I can help teach it.
Yes,
and help my students where applicable. But from a personal ability perspective, it's not something I spend time on, things that I want to accomplish when I work.
Yes, and it's very important that you said that. Like, you still need to know things so you are able to transfer that knowledge to other people, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is part of your specific game. And I think guys need to also understand that, because a lot of people say, we're talking about triangles, me and you, like we're the wrong people to be implementing triangles in our game, but we still know how to teach it correctly with the proper body mechanics, correct?
Yeah, quiet time.
So the next one, once you understand of training with intention, which leads into studying and knowing your body type, and studying and knowing your body type will obviously help with training with the right intention and skill development, and learning not just to win, but to develop the correct skills. We go on to the next one, which is drilling and drilling partners, which I specifically, from a coach, see a big problem with it, that the wrong people are with each other. Having the correct drilling partner is, I think, vitally important to growth, and understanding what drilling is. I think a lot of people have a misconception of drilling, and that is, when I ask people about drilling, what do you think most people would say? What is drilling? How they should drill?
They think they're just practicing their moves with zero resistance or maximum resistance.
Yeah, exactly. With that comes the resistance problem, and it becomes a repping problem. So they think they need to get 100 reps in within a certain time limit, which is totally nonsense. And drilling needs to be focused on mechanics of the body. So are you doing the correct mechanics with a partner that is allowing you the correct resistance for you, and then obviously can increase resistance to a certain degree where it's not a full fight, but your mechanics have to be sound, right? So drilling is definitely about having the the sound mechanics, and that comes with having the correct drilling partner as well. When it comes to partners, I'm sure you've dealt with this as well. You just get a partner that is not in it, like is really either applying too much resistance or too little resistance.
Both ends of that spectrum are the most frustrating thing. I'm just trying to get better at a skill set.
Yeah.
And this person is either just falling over as soon as I just touch them, or they're fighting me 100% at everything, and I can't even like get an inch.
Yeah. So how would you, if you came up against that in class, how would you correct that?
Usually it involves a little conversation. Hey, obviously depends on what feedback I'm getting in terms of if they're falling over or maximum resistance. If they're soft, I try to give an example. Like if I push you and you're standing, you're not going to just fall over, will you?
Yeah.
You know, you show, take a step back, and they're like, oh, that usually helps wake them up a bit. Maximum resistance, to be in conversation first with a little physical demonstration, show like we need to learn how to do the movements first. If we can't do it soft and slow, we'll never be able to do it at 100%.
100%. It really comes into being around or finding the people or group of people that have the same intentions as you, right? I think that's also super important, is having that group of people that have the same goals as you, short-term, long-term goals, same type of training intention that you need, and focusing the drilling with them as well. It's going to be hard to implement this type of drilling with obviously a new person on the mat. They need to be informed and taught. And it's definitely an educational thing in teaching individuals on what is drilling and how to drill correctly. So the next one is sparring, which is a big one as well that we see. And what do you think the problem is with sparring in terms of people think what they think is good for them and what is actually not?
I think the biggest issue people have with sparring in terms of getting the most out of their training sessions is that they think it's good to just have a freestyle fight the whole time or open sparring the whole time, but you're not forcing yourself into bad positions or into positions that are going to actually improve whatever it is that you're working on. Again, comes back to intention. As you said, if I'm working back escapes, I need to have someone take my back and then escape from there in order to improve on that skill.
And when it comes to sparring, again, I think it really comes down to training with intention, right? Training with the goal of building a skill in a certain position. And same thing, then you're also going to have the right training partners. As well, it comes to a concept of 80-20 rule, right? We've spoken about this before, that most people, when they come into the sport, especially like white belts, they're like, if I roll with the black belt every day, I'm going to become the black belt. And it's actually the total opposite. You'll degress and you won't increase your skill set, because when you're sparring, you need to be able to implement skill development on the individual. So if you're going with a black belt and you can't do anything, you're just learning precision in terms of surviving and building heart and all of that type of stuff, but you're not really building skill development. So we have that 80-20 rule where you need to roll with individuals a little bit under your skill set 80% of the time. Obviously, depending on competition and competitors, but that you're able to implement certain aspects, short-term goals on the individual that is applying resistance, but to a certain skills set development, right? So for instance, a purple belt on a low level, blue belt or white belt will be able to control the individual, right? And then be able to develop the skill set and implement certain sequences on the individual, with that individual giving what he thinks is a lot of resistance. And then the 20% of the time you're going with guys as good as you and better, and that's to obviously develop that skill set in the hardest environment and to build heart and conditioning and all that type of stuff. But it's definitely not, the sparring shouldn't be all about going with the best guys all the time and you getting crushed and smashed.
Cool. I wanted to ask about, in terms of, obviously, without getting too much detail into actual technique, but structuring my actual training session.
Yeah.
Obviously, I have to go to class and do the curriculum, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
Good. But Should I be picky about my sparring partners, my training partners?
Yes, because so to lay it out step by step, you should first have some type of training intention. So what do you want as a short-term goal? What are you trying to achieve and develop? Say it's triangles. You then need to understand, is triangles good for your body and viable for your skill set? And then either getting your coach or going online and finding people that are really good at triangles and watching competition tape on how they are performing it, entering it, and finishing it. Then taking, say you found 10 things, 3 of them, and before class and after class, drilling these with your drilling partners that you have picked specifically for that. And then in sparring, all your intentions is to basically hit those triangles from, say, it's closed guard. It can be frustrating because sometimes you won't even get there, but your intentions is always to just be working on that specific thing. Instead of like, oh, the closed guard triangle is not working anymore. Okay, well, I'm going to try and just wrestle up. That's not developing what your short-term goal is. That's now developing something else. So I would basically do it in that order where you create a plan, you create an intention of skill development, you start implementing that skill development in drilling, and then implementing that skill development in your sparring. If that answers.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And then kind of counter to that, I know obviously it's a running meme in jiu-jitsu and martial arts. You know, there's a new flash. Someone wins a big tournament, suddenly Baron Bolo is like back in. You know, what are your thoughts? How does that end?
So this comes to the last point that we need to talk about, and that is consistency and not being influenced. So consistency is key. And also what I mean by that is some people can't train every day, so you need to maximize your training time. And by developing and implementing this system and these points that we spoke about into your everyday BJJ training, you've already, I think, consumed the best way possible and used your time correctly. Now, when it comes to the point of influence, I think guys need to really stick to their short-term goal plans and long-term goal plans. And that also comes down to the individual. If they are easily influenced, the group of people they're around and their coaches they're around, if they allow the influence or they are all being influenced by that. And it is a big problem nowadays because we're in an era of free information. And not all information is the same information, and not all information is good. You need to know and have a filter on it. And it's very hard for individuals, especially when they're brand new into jiu-jitsu as white belts, they're trying to consume as much as they want. And that's why we developed as well this QW Infinity app, where you have a journey and a structure and are being told what to learn at what times and so forth. As a white belt, you should be doing and learning this. As a blue belt, this. As a purple belt, this, and goes on forth. And as well as in QW, you have coaches that are knowledgeable that can guide you with all these steps to the correct place. So I'll advise students to come to the coaches and, provide this information, ask the questions so they can give them guidance. And that's the difference between QW and everyone else, is that we have the coaching structure and we have an online structure that can answer all these questions. But with being influenced, it's a struggling process that we will always have, and it's up to coaches and the individuals to keep individuals on short-term goals and long-term goals. But I think you'll be less influenced if you implement these traits of training with intention of skill development, not winning, having a plan, studying, knowing your body type, having the correct drilling partners, sparring with a plan and being consistent. I think if you just implement those type of aspects, it will be very hard for the individual to be influenced. I see personally students that don't have a plan and don't have any of these aspects. I always see these students are the ones that are being influenced. So they basically YouTube training, they competition hop, where it's like they watch one competition, they see a high level guy do X, now they do X, next week it's Y, then they do Y, and that's normal. But hopefully this video can answer a lot of questions for the individuals that are training and on their journey, and give them good structure and a plan of how to implement it and when to implement it and where to implement it. And it will, if I knew this when I was a white belt, I think it would have put my growth in a massive advantage. And I do see this is how the top guys in the world are training. No top competitor or just a general guy that is very good at jiu-jitsu trains randomly. No one trains just on YouTube training. No one trains just for the sake of training. Yes, you have days like that. We're human, where we just want to come in and sweat and have some fun. But 80% of the time, top guys are always training with some type of intention and skill development.
I mean, it makes so much sense when you just nod like that. I think that's very helpful to other people watching who haven't really thought about, developing their skills in that regard, like how to fast track it.
Yeah, and I think the people get frustrated, especially new white belts and blue belts do get frustrated. This should help them in terms of not getting frustrated, because the two things why people quit jiu-jitsu is adversity, the environment is too hard for them, or they get bored and they leave. And you do see that with higher level guys, purples, browns, and especially black belts, where boredom comes in because they're not they're not implementing the strategy of skill development. When you get at a high level and maybe you've won some big competitions, your ego might grow, and then you think you know everything, and it's not really about that. It's about always the Kaizen theory, always achieving that 1% better every day, and that comes down to training with intention. And if you carry on with that type of mindset and the Kaizen theory, I really think you'll never have that problem of being bored and not knowing what to do.
Yeah, 100%.
Great. Well, I hope this helped everyone. Comment down below if there's any other topics that you guys want to talk about.